I'm pleased now to introduce Alexandra Bounia, who is Professor of Museology at the University of the Aegean in Greece. Her research interests focus on the history, theory and management of collections, museum ethics, museum sustainability, and the role of museums in dealing with difficult and political issues. She's published in Greek and international journals and participates in national and international research programs. Recent publications are The Political Museum, Power, Conflict and Identity in Cyprus, published in 2016, and later this year her edited volume, credited with Andrew Whitcomb, entitled The Ethics of Collecting Trauma, will be published by Routledge. I look forward to reading that one. That will be very good. The title of her talk is Sustaining Heritage on the Island of Lesbos, Greece, Community Museums and Their Impact.
Thank you. I have a whole system here, so hopefully everybody can hear me without having to hold the mic, right?
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. Thank you very much, the organizers, for putting together such a wonderful conference. It's really great to be here in St. Andrews. I have my notes, and I have my notes because Peter was very clear to me, you cannot go over your time, and I will try to keep that. But before I start using my notes, I just want to share with you a thought so that I position my paper sort of, within the discussion, and then a little story. Very brief, I promise. So a thought, as I was listening this morning and right now the papers presented, I was thinking that we're talking about community museums, and as far as I understand them, there are community museums that are made for the communities. And I think we heard some examples of that. There are community museums that are built with the communities, and I think that we also heard some examples from that. So my paper is not going to be about any of those, but it's going to be about communities that make their own museums. So community museums that are created by the communities. And this is connected to my story. I started teaching at the University of the Aegean, which is located on 7 islands of the Aegean Sea. I'm taking you to the other side now of the Mediterranean. I didn't think of having a video, Darko, but I promise next time. When I started teaching there, one of the exercises that I was asking my first-year students to do was to go and talk to the local people on the island about the museums of the island. So they were doing these small interviews, and every year, and that was for a few years in a row, every year the outcomes were pretty much the same. 95% of the inhabitants of the island of Lesbos, where our headquarters are, had visited their local museum, the archaeology or the art museum or the art gallery once when they were students, at primary school or something like that. When we were asking them who they would send to their museum, they would, like 95% or even higher, told us that they would send their visitors, relatives, friends, people who would visit them. They would send them there. Then the question was, okay, and do you want to close them down? If you're not visiting them, shall we close them down to save some money and use the money for other purposes? The answer was always, oh, no, leave them. They're good. They're good for our tourists. And then the question was, okay, and why you don't visit them? And the answer was always, oh, well, they're not our museum. They are put by the government for us. So I think that this is a starting point. This is where I started thinking, okay, and where are your museums? And this is where I would like to start my paper, because my paper is about their museums. And my struggle, and I have to put it out there right from the beginning, is not to interfere by my professionalism, in inverted commas, into their museums, because I feel that the moment that I will start doing that, their museums will become not their museums like the other museums on the island. So this is my starting point, and now I'm going to go to my notes and start talking a little bit more about the theoretical background and also about the museums. So my starting point is a novelist and museum founder Orhan Pamuk, who in his Modern Manifesto for Museums, which was published in many different ways. It was presented at ICOM and also enacted in his Museum of Innocence in Istanbul, highlights the values that he considers important and exciting about museums today. He proposes moving away from the model of the encyclopedic art museum, like the big ones, and instead focus on museums that are smaller, centered on individuals and their stories, and, this is a quote, support people in turning their own small homes and stories into exhibition spaces, end of quote. This seems to be exactly what has been happening for years now on the island of Lesbos, but also other parts of the country and many other parts of the world, I'm sure about that. These small museums are created by individuals and or small groups of people who share a similar belief in the need to preserve their personal and community memories and share them with others in order to, again, referring Pamuk, display the depths of our humanity. So as I mentioned, as a member of the Department of Cultural Technology and Communication of the University of the Aegean, I've been collaborating, using the sites for my student visits with different local museums through the years. Lesbos is an island characterized by rich biodiversity, unique natural landscapes, and diverse cultural heritage. It has a long history of movements of populations, as it is located on the northeast part of the Aegean Sea, at the crossroads between Europe and Asia, and has been at the forefront of major historical events that have affected the synthesis of the local population, as well as their understanding of identity and community. I don't think that I need to remind anyone of the big European reception crisis of 2015-16, which, of course, like all crises, it hasn't stopped. Okay, it continues every day as everyday people arrive across the water. Recent research conducted at the university by one of our students recorded 61 museums and collections open to the public, a record number if you consider the size of the island. It's approximately 700 square kilometers and has 84,000 people of population. Out of those museums and collections, more than 35 are established by individuals and or small groups of people, usually consisting of local teachers, members of the clergy, but also housewives and fishermen, who feel that they want to save the memory of their village and or a specific historical event. The other museums have been established by the state or by entities such as local authorities, companies, and or the church. Although a more detailed study and categorization of these museums and collections is required, their number alone makes it clear how important the local people consider the museum as an institution to be. Each of these institutions serves as an important catalyst for the creation and dissemination of knowledge, values, and memories, while fostering the island's cultural and natural resilience. So in this presentation, I would like to focus on three such examples of community institutions in Lesbos. The Raisin Museum of Ambeliko, a small local community initiative focusing on the traditional techniques of raisin collection and the relation of the village people to the forest next to their village. The Folklore Museum of Sikamia, an initiative of the local women to preserve the memories of their communities. And the Museum of Refugee Memory in Scala Lutron, a very small institution aiming to commemorate one of the most traumatic moments in the island's history, that is the forced exchange of populations between Greece and Turkey in 1922. I would like to use these cases in order to argue that these institutions, small scale, personalized, and grassroots, are very important agents of transmission of intergenerational knowledge, memories, and beliefs, which are all essential for the survival and continuance of the communities, their cultural practices and values. It is exactly these practices and values that played and continue to do so a vital role in shaping sustainable practice for the future and for the next generations. Therefore, studying these small museums, what I call them micro-museologies, using the term that a colleague introduced a few years ago, allows us to consider issues of cultural sustainability and the museologies of the future. So I'm now going to turn to each of these institutions and present them in brief in order to elaborate a little bit more on the stories and ideas and also on some of their museological practices. So I think that I have some pictures from the Raisin Museum in Ambelico. This is a museum that was established in 1994. And as I speak, it is going through a major redisplay. This is the church building, and the museum is housed to an auxiliary, this is the auxiliary building, which is located next to the church. The museum has 3 rooms, and each of them is dedicated to a particular topic. It has a folklore collection, a religious collection, religious objects collection, and the raisin collection. The collections were assembled by the local priest. His name is Stratisca Kabouras, who is still the soul of the effort. He started collecting together with his family, as he often says, as he was studying the village archives in the 1990s, and he realized that the raisin collection in particular was what made their village different from others, and this is a quote from him. Most of the objects were collected from members of his family who were involved in the raisin collection as workers and supported his vision. As Stratis says, quote, "We took the pine cone and we did it the founding stone of our village and its emblem. And on that, we built our cultural history of our land." That's end of quote. The aim of the museum is to present the history of the community and thus share it with visitors. Furthermore, they aim to promote the study of collection and underline the importance of raisin as part of the revival of the local co-op, an effort that started back in 2009. And they hope that this kind of effort will bring the village prosperity and make young people decide to stay longer instead of leaving to go to the big cities. This is another quote. There seems to be a close connection between the past and the present. The museum does not just aim to encourage memory building, but to become a starting point for developing anew the relationship between the village people and the forest next to it. This is a decision based on a combination of financial, identity, and memory reasons that somehow seem to be blended when talking to Stratis or the members of his family. These are some use of the museum. You can see their display. The second museum that I would like now to go to is, I have it in another page, sorry about that, is the Folklore Museum of Sikamia. Now, the island of Sikamia has been connected very much with the refugee crisis of 2015-16. However, the museum that I'm going to show to you has nothing to do with that, in the sense that the people who have put it together, they have decided to sort of leave that on the side. It is also located in the old village school, which is now disused. And at first glance, it appears to engage in a very traditional idea of folklore. Its displays represent the idea of local traditions embodied in folkloric material culture, such as traditional costumes, rugs, domestic linen, and cooking utensils. It was established in 2002 by the local association of women in an effort, and this is a quote, to save the traditions and the memory of our village, according to the president of the association. The women themselves, mostly homemakers, began to collect all the objects in 2000. The collection consists of objects that were either donated to the museum by their owners, persuaded by the women, or they were rescued, this is a term that they use, from their owners, because either their owners had passed away and the descendants had no interest in them, or they had simply abandoned these objects in the old houses that were also abandoned when they left the village. As Marianthi, the president, claims, and that's a quote, "We took them, we, the women of the association, we washed them, we ironed them, and we put them there. We rescued them and protected them." And that's a quote. That care is a very central notion in what Marianthi and the other women of the village express. The objects in this museum come from with a range of personal stories and family connections. Their provenance and their relationship to the donors and the families of the village are meticulously recorded by the women of the association in a handwritten book. They also have many stories to tell when asked about them. The table that was made by the father of one of the museum organizers, but was donated by another family who had bought it from him, serves as a reminder of both families. Or, for example, this beautiful wedding dress that you can see there at the back, I'm sorry, that you can see there at the back, is not one wedding gown, but actually it comes from two parts, from two different wedding gowns that were put together to commemorate jointly a whole wedding gown, but also the memories of multiple families. The presentation of the collection is organized in a scenography conceived by the women themselves. There is a living room, a kitchen, a laundry, a textile room with looms, a schoolroom, and the bedroom or office of Sardis Mirivilis, a famous Greek author that came from the village, although never lived in that place and left very young. The women also serve as the keepers of the museum in more than one meanings of the term. As they take visitors around, they eagerly share with them their stories, memories, and feelings of nostalgia for a lost idyllic past. They talk about gender roles, the structure of society, traditions that have been lost and others that are still alive, tools and techniques. They occasionally offer the local name of an object, and they consistently refer to the donors, creators, and users of the artifacts. So every artifact has a long genealogy behind it. Their stories are nostalgic, but also selective. They avoid anything controversial. If visitors inquire after specific objects that have difficult connections to people or events, such as the refugee experience, there's usually a very brief reference to that, and very quickly the discussion goes to what they want to commemorate, the ideal past of their community. A place where a closely knit, family-centered past is to be remembered, and anything that goes against or beyond that is to be forgotten or put aside. The third museum, and I'll go very quickly because I know that I'm running out of time, is in another village in Scala Lutron. The museum was established in 2003 and was an initiative of a local group of people called the Dolphins. They were both, well, all local fishermen and their families that come from refugees that came to the island of Lesbos in 1922 with the exchange of populations. The museum is just one of the activities of the group and forms part of their wish, and this is a quote, to retrace their roots and to encourage Asia Minor memories and identity. That's end of quote. It is housed in the old school of the village, now disused, and it is housed in a part of the initial village that was used as a port by the people. And then when the refugees came in 1922, they built their houses because this was an unused land. And this is where this particular community sort of grew their roots. Now, the refugee identity is still very strong, despite the fact that there's hardly anyone who actually experienced the events or even, So visiting the museum is usually a very emotional experience for both visitors and the members of the community, and it's something that has a strong impact on everybody who is visiting the museum. I have visited the museum many times with my students. With no exception, one or two will start crying at some point during the visit, because whatever is presented to the museum, I'm sorry, I have some memories, some images as well. Usually they cry in front of the map because every time they get a very emotional presentation about the experiences of the people who had gone through the process of refugee status, and also they always have memories of their own families, and there is something that triggers their emotions. So, I don't want to go into the details, but basically what I want to emphasize is the very strong emotional impact that this museum has that comes from the people and is shared by the visitors in a very, very strong way. So the three museums presented here share some common elements. They are created through the initiative of one individual or a few individuals. They all focus on what they consider their characteristic story or idea or accomplishment, material or immaterial, that sets them apart from the others. They all want to retain this connection of the land and the people. And this is exactly what is very special about these museums, that they have a very special relationship with the people. Their individual character remains individual despite the fact that their contents might look very similar. They have a values-led approach. They focus on intergenerational learning and sharing that goes beyond the immediate community. And despite the fact that their professional standards are not there, they have a very strong museum ethos and a very strong collecting ethos that I think is very, very important. I will not go through the rest of it. I will just tell you something I started visiting all these museums because of my students. I will never forget, for example, the day that one of my students, a very tall, very, how can I say, a very vocal, very strong boy, very tall, holding his bike helmet under his hand, came to my office and he said to me, do you know, I want to do my thesis on my local museum. And I was like, what is your local museum? Is it about bikes? Is it about, what is your local museum about? He said to me, it's about the refugee memory. I'm a fourth generation refugee myself. Is it possible to be a fourth refugee migration? A fourth generation refugee yourself? I don't know. What I do know is that this man introduced me to the museum and to the people there, but also felt so strongly about this particular connection that he did his thesis, and actually he volunteers quite regularly up to this day to that museum. So thank you very much.
That's wonderful, Alexandra. Thank you.
I'm sorry, there are more photographs. Yes, just a few more. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, just some images of the museum so that you can see some of the objects. I think I have one more. Yes, and some focus about the artworks.
Alexandra, thank you so much for introducing us to those three lovely little museums. And I mean, they say a lot, don't they, about people's connections with place and with memory. Absolutely wonderful. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure there will be questions for you.
Really loved that. It's just a very quick question, particularly for the first museum. I was just wondering if there's any sort of connections with Greek diaspora, with anybody who's sort of left, particularly sort of going family connections to North America or whatever. I'm just thinking, I work in an Andean context, and there people would send money for anything that looks like a foundation narrative about their back home community. So.
Yes, all of these, thank you very much. I think that this is a very good point. All of these museums, they are connected with the diaspora in two ways. Not so much financially, so they don't get money from people from the diaspora, but a lot of the events that are organized around these museums and a lot of things that are happening around these museums, they have as a target audience and contributors, people from the diaspora who are coming during the summer. The peak time for these museums, they're open, all around the year. The way to visit them is basically to go there at the door. There's usually a mobile phone number, on the door. You call the number, and then one of the people of the island of the village living, somewhere around there will come down, open the museum, and start taking people around. But the time of the year where they organize all sorts of events and all sorts of things is during July and August. And this is because of the diaspora, either from in the case of Lesbos, most of the people have gone as migrants in Australia. So there are many people coming back from Australia. There are many people coming back from South Africa. There are strong connections with Africa, on the island, and also, North America as well, but not so much. It's usually Australia and Africa, South Africa. So yes, and this is part of the idea that the diaspora, either from Athens or other big cities in Greece or from other parts of the world, they will come back and then they will remember, they will donate, they will discuss, and it's not financial because, as you can see, everything that you saw there is done by the people themselves, and they don't want help, in the sense that they don't want somebody else to put their hand into their museum. And at the same time, personally, I feel that this is something that we should protect, because sometimes they get tempted to be professionalized. And if we, we professionalize them, then we're going to lose that special character that makes that their museum.
Thank you very much. Alexandra, I think we're going to have to stop there just because we're running short on time a bit, but I'm sure that people will be finding you at lunchtime to ask more questions, because that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much.